How's it going, everyone? My name is Robert Braley.
My name is Chad.
We are Bray, Team Bray right now, soon to be brokerage in the greater St. Louis, both Illinois and Missouri side. That's the shortest I'll go because you probably read our, whatever monologue before you picked us as your podcast for this moment. When it comes to the objective of this podcast, it's going to be for you to get to know us as well as talk in, opinions and details by some major topics in the real estate industry, all commercial, all in, investment and all residential. So in regard to it, this we're going to take a little bit more broad to kind of get to know us, and so you can decide whether or not we are your podcast for for daily listening. The topic is,
How to vet an agent.
yeah, what do you mean by that?
Well, by vetting an agent, what we're truly saying is how to qualify an agent. Why is that important? Well, I would say for the majority of you, this buying a home or selling a home may quite literally be the largest financial decision that you may ever make in your life. And it's
Yeah.
not uncommon whatsoever for almost every single person down the street to know an agent or know a realtor, whether it's your aunt, your cousin, your coworker,
Yep.
one
It
of the
does
members
get,
of your
yeah,
church.
it does get annoying too because I run into a lot of past buyers or that like want to sell their property, and they're like, I had a bad experience with an agent, and I'm like, well, how'd you meet him? And they're like, well, I met him at an event, concert, local friend, or church or something like that. And I'm like, okay, like how'd they interview? Like, and they are
They
always like,
probably
well,
asked you, what do you mean?
yeah, yeah. What do you mean by it? And then I'm like, well, when it comes to vetting an agent, I always recommend, interview at least two or three individuals before you choose, because this is obviously one of the biggest purchases people are going to make.
Right? And we're not here saying your aunt's a bad realtor. I'm sure she's great. But at the end of the day, you have a goal, and it's really important to figure out and understand whether or not this specific individual can meet your goals.
Yeah.
Beyond just the idea that you know them personally or that you like them, or I'd say you.
Trust is important.
It
Yeah.
is, of
Yeah.
course, right? But you also have to trust their process and their capabilities,
Yeah.
right?
Your aunt probably is a good realtor or something like that. I got plenty of family friends that have chosen me as a realtor, and I would argue, I would still say they chose me in an unqualified way, even though I, biasly would say they got lucky and chose right.
Absolutely.
And I've seen other agents get chosen, and they were awesome. And there's a lot of agents that build off of that environment because they are involved in a lot of events and stuff like that. But I just think it's very important that we qualify our agents, interview quite a few on such a big and expensive purchase or investment of our life. And instead, we're just choosing these people at random, right? Not just trust. So, trust aside, what would you argue, Chad, would be like three main points to qualifying slash vetting an agent in your eyes?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the basics. You better hope they're competent. You better know, or you better hope that they already know what they're doing. A or B, are they reliable, right? Are they not going to miss an appointment because they overslept? And I know that seems very simple and small, but at the end of the day, that can make a big impact. And I'd say probably the most important is you need to make sure that they have some sort of sense of passion or pride behind the work that they do.
So, elaborate on that. What do you mean?
Well, one of my favorite questions, that I would like to go on if I were to start the process. Good thing is I know some pretty good realtors. I don't think I need to qualify any at the moment, but the main question is, why should I hire you? And when you're sitting across that table in an interview with them, that is an exact question that you should ask, right? And I think we'd be able to instantly gauge based off their answer what or where their passion and pride lies with
So, yeah,
this.
what would you say is like a bad answer and a good answer then?
Honestly, if they give you any answer that of why they should, I don't know if that is an answer that I'd like or to accept.
What
One.
would you mean? That gets a little confusing.
Yeah, that
So, yeah,
is
yeah.
apologies. So, if you ask, "Hey Rob, why should I hire you?" and you start going off on a tangent, say, "Hey, I do marketing, we do showings, blah blah." Once you start telling me the what's, I kind of instantly am already looking past that. Really, what I want to see
Yeah.
when interviewing an agent, and specifically for them answering the why should I hire you question, is to what? Ask more questions.
Yeah.
They're going to ask more questions to better understand you and better understand your situation and your goals. And that truly, really makes me believe that they have an actual interest
Yeah.
in what they're trying to accomplish with you rather than just looking to the end game.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like any interview process, right? Any person that's trying to hire a new candidate or representative, they'll ask these stereotypical questions, but they'll find themselves having to switch up their questions because, those questions are popular and the person might have just Googled the stereotypical answers, right? Um, why should I hire you is a very strategic question, very obvious, but it's not obvious to find out that we're traditionally looking for what's when we ask that question, but we should actually be looking for whys, right?
Exactly.
And a why doesn't necessarily bleed an answer, right? So when you ask that agent that, and he starts going into this long game plan of I can do this, 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 and this. I mean, a couple red flags should raise up because what we are and should be looking for is more like, why should I hire you? And that agent goes, well, I mean, I could answer that best I could, but I got to get to know you more,
Right?
right?
I got to even know as an agent whether or not you and I would be a good fit together.
Yeah.
Should I even be working with you, right?
Yep.
And to meet your goals, I may not even be the best person for that specific. Now we most likely are, but it shows an element of, hey, I need to know and understand
I'm not
you.
satisfied with the stereotypical answer.
Right, because any agent can do the basics, right?
Yeah.
It takes a really good agent to sit and understand and align your goals
Yeah. No, I
with
get
the
you.
objective at
Yeah.
hand.
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and I mean, one other thing that Chad and I like to do when it comes to vetting other professionals in other atmospheres is kind of along the same lines of like, why should I hire you? We dig more in depthly into like, and you guys could do this too for your agents if you're interviewing them, is why do you charge the certain amount that you're planning on charging me, right? I
Well,
want
it's
you to,
just what the market's.
yeah, yeah.
It's all my competition's doing, so why can't I?
Yeah, no, that's the answer we definitely don't want, right? Instead, we probably want to be looking for like if somebody's like, why, if we ask, why are you charging this certain amount? They're like, well, I mean, this is the amount that I charge, but based off what you told me and based off what I got to know about you and my offer in that area, now you're not going to get the exact, non-stereotypical answer, but what we're looking for when we ask that question around commission is that they have a thought out understanding, and it's not just like based off of what the market value is or what our competition is charging, this is how much I'm going to charge you. It's more like, well, I got to pay bills, right? They're not going to go in depth, but you're just kind of looking for this mentality. I got to pay my bills, I got to make a premium to stay alive, right? And I'm in the industry and I am good at this industry, and I have to charge more because if I charge less, I'll be encumbered with so many clientele because they're all coming at me so much.
You know your value.
Yeah, yeah. So those kind of things I also look for. Why should I hire you as an agent? Well, let me get to know you better is what we're looking for. But we also like the question of like, why are you charging that certain commission amount? And if that agent just goes, the competition, and that's what the market average is. One, that's kind of price fixing, and the NAR lawsuit, along with a couple other brokerages that suffered there in 2024 and 2025 would say that's price fixing, and speaking to that is price fixing. But more importantly, a lot of agents are just going to say that and think that when they really should be qualifying the price they're charging their customers. Yeah.
And how are they going to react? That's an awkward question, if you're not prepared for it. And
Yeah,
we'll get
no.
into that a little bit more on how you want your agent to react because
Oh yeah.
if they're going to react to you this way, how are they going to react to you when they're fighting tooth and nail, going against the grain with the other party, trying to get you the best deal possible?
Nope, I agree with you. And that's one thing Chad and I, with the team members that we train, really we want to make sure that they're prepared for that question. Along with don't just give stereotypical answers when you get asked a question. We always have the rule of thumb, the best response to a customer's question is more questions, or more importantly, the best
Always.
the best sales pitch is always starts with a question, right? I also like that you said competency is your second one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. If you don't mind, I'm going to take this here. When it comes to competency, agents earn a commission, and I think you can kind of gauge that competency from what I just said when you ask them how much are you charging and why do you charge that much. If they really dig into their value, that's one way. But also competency, I would like to introduce something called niches, if you guys haven't heard of that. And a niche in any market or any industry is basically how micro you can get with your profession, right? In the world of real estate, in the industry of real estate, you don't only have commercial, residential, investments, lease, property management, but you can get even more micro and go commercial leasing, commercial warehouse investments, retail. You could go residential and go really, really niche around divorce, probate, first time home buyer. What other ones can you think of? I'm
I'm
falling.
drawing a blank
Yeah.
because we're still tapping into a lot of these markets here.
But yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the niche, it's also important to recognize what kind of customer you are. And if that agent is more of a broad agent and you feel like you need more of a niche agent, like say, unfortunately, you're getting a divorce, or unfortunately, you're inheriting a house from a death in the family, I would argue it's very important to recognize an agent that has experience as well as proactive capabilities in those areas. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then talk to me about reliability.
Well, that's reliability is exactly what we are talking about here and what that term means, right? Are they going to be there for you when you need to? Are they going to respond quickly? Are they going to meet the deadlines that are at hand? Are they going to effectively communicate with the other parties? Right? They are all things as far as what we like to consider ourselves as quote unquote the party leader of.
So elaborate on party leader because I like that idea, and I think it's important to talk about
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Well,
competency but reliability when it comes to party leader. Talk to me
yeah,
there.
absolutely. When we talk about buying or even selling a home, you're not just working, you hire an agent. It's not just you and the agent. You have a team that you have to build, especially if you're a buyer, you're going to need a lender. If still in if we're still talking about buyers, you need an inspector, an appraiser. You're going to need to find an insurance agent. You're going to need to work with all of these different parties on a very strict timeline.
And there's one person that
And
correlates all
there's
that.
one person that is their job to coordinate all of that.
Yeah.
And that is us as realtors and your realtor to do that for you.
Yeah, because of the experience that we have and professionals have. But also, I would argue experience is good. I've met a lot of agents, and I hope you don't think I'm calling you out, but I've met a lot of agents that have plus 50 house sales, and I just feel like their proactive level or their understanding of the transaction in that retrospect is still very mild, right? There's still a gopher handling stuff for their brokerage versus actually taking head on and being party leader for their
And I would
client.
say, and there's a big difference between them actually doing it and then them doing it efficiently and effectively.
Yeah.
That's very important.
No,
All
I get
right.
you completely.
You would think that someone with 50 transactions under their belt, 50 closings under their belt would get that down, but you'd be quite surprised
Yeah.
with that. I remember a lot of the time in the beginning of my real estate career, I'd always be so nervous about going against a seasoned, experienced agent. When I come to find out, there's not always anything special.
Yeah.
Just because you have 100 deals, you've been in it for 15 years, that doesn't mean anything. It does not mean, I mean, it means
Very
something.
fair.
It means something, but
I get you though.
it's not
Yeah.
the end of the world if they don't.
Yeah. So in regard to it, if we were to break down reliability into more of a face value idea, where would you go? Maybe social media, online, or
Sure,
something
I
like
mean, the
that. Yeah.
first place I'm looking, I mean, other than personal referrals, my sphere of influence, getting in contact with an agent through someone else,
Yep.
right? That's always a good source. But first thing I'm going to is online. I'm looking at their reviews.
reviews, Google,
Google,
Zillow,
even on Facebook.
Homes.com. Facebook is another great spot,
So many different areas of
Yeah.
where,
All these, yeah, social media areas. Yeah.
yeah, and that's very, that can be very effective. And there's also can be a lot of false hope in some of these reviews, right? As well, I would say number two is as well as probably their involvement, especially within the community,
Okay.
right? Are
Elaborate.
are they doing things outside of just putting their face up on a billboard or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be, right? Are they supporting local businesses? Are they
Yeah.
going around town meeting,
Involvement.
yeah, meeting, like I said, the local business owners, promoting local business,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. Are they, do they have a sense of, again, community outreach? Are they volunteering? What are they doing to not only, you know,
Yeah.
benefit and market themselves, but what are they doing to help the community that we all live in and that we all thrive, hopefully, in as
Yeah.
well?
No, I get you completely. So, I mean, that being said, reliability. There's one other thing that I always like to make sure that is vetted in every agent, and that's, I guess, more importantly, it's to recognize that an agent isn't necessarily just a salesperson, right?
No,
And I would argue maybe an agent isn't a salesperson more than they are actually like a counselor in an industry of some form. So, what I mean by
absolutely.
that is, look at it this way, right? Um, when you hire an agent on, yes, they need to have sales skills, but more importantly, a traditional salesman is somebody who's hired to sell a product, either traditionally invented a service or a product invented by somebody else, and they are hiring this third party individual to sell this. They don't have choice of price, they don't have choice of value. They have to just sell whatever they're given to that customer and find the potential buyer. But it's different when it comes to an agent, right? When it comes to an agent, they're selling themselves legitimately. And you probably have spoken to other agents that are like, yeah, you're buying me, I'll always be here. But we all know that's bullcrap, right? Used cars, retail, you never see these individuals again. I've bought in so many things where agents or salespeople are like, yeah, no, I'm going to be here with you 100% of the way. And I come back, 6 months later, and I'm like, I have a question. They're like, yeah, that guy, he's busy. We'll get you Tony over here or something like that. So when I think about how I want to vet maybe an agent in the industry, I want to look at them more as a counselor with salesmanship or even better negotiation skills, right? Counselor, you brought up the idea of party leader. That's beautiful. But then, even more importantly, communicating to the parties and communicating to you, they don't make the ultimate yes or no decision in the end.
Who?
The agent doesn't, right?
Absolutely. Okay.
The yes or no decision is on you in the end. And importantly, I would say an agent, the most skilled agents have mastered the capability of bringing you absolute confidence to either say yes or no. A person that has experienced a truly qualified agent will be able to walk away from the entire transaction and say, I knew what I bought, I knew the decisions I made, and I knew why they were made. And it was all because this agent was able to clearly communicate with me, that idea. And that's what I would argue the best agents do best. Now, does that mean that they're going to bring you every nitpick yes or no question? No, of course not. There's going to be a lot of decisions and negotiations and things that are going to happen with or without you, right? Involved, like it or not. But when it comes to those big final concluding decisions, that agent needs to know what he's talking about, and he needs to be able to communicate it clearly because, arguably, he's more of a counselor than he is a
And
salesperson.
how does that first start? Right? By
Yeah,
asking questions and figuring out what you, as the client,
exactly.
wants
Yeah.
and
So it just
needs.
comes back to that.
Mm-hmm.
You're exactly right. And then the how did we put it last time we were talking when it comes to like how to qualify if your agent's good at sales or negotiation, the more awkward they are.
Mm-hmm.
So like obviously when it comes to awkward, like it's awkward with charisma, right? So I'm not saying go hire somebody that's really bad socially, but in more importantly, when you hire this agent on to be your counselor, you're also going to hire them on to be your negotiator. And negotiations things like that are awkward, right? Didn't you have a situation you said that it was just really awkward for you? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of my very first actual home buyers that I was
Yeah.
working with back in the day. Saw this house that they loved, but
Mm-hmm.
guess what? It was about $100,000 overpriced.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, did I feel very awkward giving that agent a call and basically saying, "Hey, we're ready, we're fully qualified, but our price is very far off," right? And
Yep.
I was extremely nervous. I was like, "Oh man, this agent's gonna hate me. I'm coming in lowballing him, blah blah blah." And what actually ended up happening? We closed $85,000 under their original asking price, right?
Beautiful.
This is just getting over that hump of just, hey, this is a business, right, between me and the other agent, and
Yep.
you got to get rid of the awkward feeling of not everyone's going to agree with you.
And you have an interesting way about you. I've seen you talk to so many customers and like, the conversation, not customers, like agents or anybody, the conversation just seems awkward and feels awkward as you're pushing and pushing and prying through. But in the end, they're always just like they love you, they're gun ho for you, and they're like everybody's happy. And I'm assuming the
Yeah.
end of that
Well, I mean,
transaction, people were happy.
I make it at the end of the day, there's always two
Yeah.
sides to the party, right? The agents on the other end are trying to get the best deal for their client. Agent on our end, right, is trying to do the same thing.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's how you can come and meet in the middle, right? Now, we always like to lean more towards our side. We do what we can, right? But it's all about meeting both sides'
Yep.
goal. But what can we do on our side to make sure that you're getting exactly what essentially you're paying for and
Yeah.
what you want?
Yep. And I think it's also like, being good at being in awkward situations. A person or an agent can handle that kind of stuff, but still not scare away the
I mean,
competition that they.
you do it enough, it's not really
Yeah,
awkward anymore, right? On a
exactly.
surface level, it feels awkward. You got to go in and be like, oh, I gotta, you know,
Yep.
talk to this guy
It's a
and
cringy
piss him
moment.
off. But at
Yep.
the end of the day, the more and more you do it, the more and more you're just confident in going in, and you know, scared money don't make money, right? If you're not taking risks, if you're not just shooting from the hip sometimes and just taking what's in front of you,
Yep.
you may never know what
And
opportunity
I've had
presents
so many
itself.
agents. I've had so many agents come to me in which they'll be like, "Yeah, my client doesn't want to pay this amount. They'd like 15,000 off or something like that." And I'm like, "No, we can't do that. Sorry." And they're like, "Okay, we tried," and they'll leave, right? And I just like I feel so bad for those clients because the agent's gonna come back to them and be like, "We gave them everything we could, man." And unfortunately, it was an impossible deal. And that person's like, "Okay, I guess I'm missing out on that 15,000." And
Well,
that
they think they're walking away with the leverage,
yeah.
right? They're just saying, "Oh, I mean, there's a lot of power in being able to walk away, right?" But at the end of the day, you're 15,000 off.
No, $15,000 is a lot of money.
It absolutely is there. But was there even an attempt to be
No,
made to
exactly. Yeah.
meet in the middle,
And
right?
then the attempt or not, what was the skill set of the individual attempting it, right? Like I was saying earlier, I've seen you go into these conversations and you're just like sleeves up. This is gonna get awkward, but you're still fishing. The whole
Yeah.
conversation is fishing, like not pushing them away, not scaring them away, but we're still gonna get what we need to get done. And it's so funny. Like sometimes you'll just like the more awkward it is, the more awkward the situation is. When you leave that, you're like, dude,
It
like
was fun. It was like,
I was really good at that.
yeah, like
I was
that
just talking to an agent online and Facebook Marketplace, just something simple. And she was a fellow agent. She was selling some signs or something, and she was getting rid of them. And I just always like to negotiate. And we negotiated, but there ended up not being as many signs. And she's like, "Oh, like, um, how much did you want back?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm good. Like, even though we're missing signs, I was just negotiating with you for the sport. You know what I mean?" Sometimes you just like get that urge where you're like,
And you can sniff them out too.
"Oh yeah,
The ones that do this for real, and then other
yeah."
ones that are
Oh, instantly.
a
There's
little bit more
times where I'll
passive.
get I'll get involved in a negotiation with an agent, and I'm like, "Oh, this guy knows what he's
Oh
doing. Or
yeah.
this girl knows what she's doing," and they're not messing around. And then it's like a good unguard touche situation. But yeah, I mean, that was a long-winded objective to, answer the idea of negotiation skills. But in general, I mean, I guess if I were vetting an agent's negotiation capabilities, I would ask, like, do you like awkward
Hmm.
situations or something around awkward, or try to make it awkward for them, stare them in the eye and see how that agent, like, if they're looking
Or
around or something
ask
like
a
that.
good question. Hey, sir, will you lower your commission?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
That's the real test
So
right there.
elaborate on that, because I've seen agents talk about that, right?
And this isn't a new idea that we're creating, but it's the idea if your potential agent or real estate agent, realtor that you're interviewing, and you ask them, about a discount, they give you their initial rate, and then you're like, hey, can you do any better, right? If they just give in, like,
Just
oh,
cave.
I could do 2.5, I could do 2.7 for my three. Well, I would argue you didn't do a very good job negotiating
What am
that,
I buying right now? No wonder you're
right?
cheaper, right? Yeah.
As someone like yourself, or I would go through and really reiterate that value
Hmm.
that we can give to you as a client, and why
Yeah.
we charge the way we do.
Yep.
We have no reason to
Yeah.
drop that down,
Yeah.
right? Again, it's very situational, of course, as you kind of went into depth on,
I mean,
different
yeah.
ways that would be possible,
Yeah.
but for the most part,
Well, it also.
they're gonna tell you why they're worth what they're worth that amount versus just bringing it down.
Oh yeah, I think I forget what it was, like a short or something I saw. Like the guy was just like, one thing we do when we talk, when potential clients come to us as agents and they're like, "Hey, can you do any cheaper?" You're like, "Yeah, I could do cheaper, but I'm not going to." And that's the
Hmm.
first cream of the crop of my interview. How'd I do? Right? I know how to negotiate, right? But one thing that a guy or whoever said that online that I disagree with, he said, essentially what we are, communicators and negotiators. I would argue we're counselors before we are both of those.
That's the idea
Yeah,
for behind practice what you
yeah,
preach, right?
yeah,
If you can't even go and negotiate on your own
yep,
behalf, on your own, you know, source of income and the
yep.
way that you, provide and support, what makes you think you're going to do it for someone else?
Nope, I agree. I agree. Another thing that I also think is important when it comes to negotiations, and we can kind of use this to segue into the last topic I would talk about when it comes to vetting an agent or qualifying an agent. We'll start out with this. When it comes to negotiating, right? You really got to know what you're talking about, right? You got to know the situation. You got to know all, nips and ends to the situation. You got to know about the property. You got to know about the individual that you're negotiating against. You got to know about your client. um, Ways that we have gotten really good at that is obviously be proactive when it comes to figuring out the exact situation about the property that you're dealing with, vetting the agent on the other end, or the potential buyer or seller on the other end of the negotiations. But most importantly, I like to go to my client and I like to just basically say, these are the three routes I'm going to take. And in the heat of the moment of negotiations is when I can get the best for you. So I need to have limits to these three areas. Not that I'm going to go these limits, right? I know these are your minimums, but I need to know what this happens, and if it's a complete shutdown, then if I can reintroduce this new idea or conclusion to
You
negotiations.
have a contingency plan.
Yeah, contingency plan, a couple of them, and I need my clients to know what they want in those three areas, and then I tell them, like, worst case scenario, you're comfortable walking away with this, correct? And they can tell me yes,
But
right?
I'm going to get you
Yeah, yeah, I'm
this.
gonna get you this. But if an agent doesn't set those expectations with their clients, they might accidentally just blow the entire negotiations, and the worst case scenario becomes a wish, right?
And
And they're
then what do
like,
they start doing? They start not trusting you because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're telling them one thing and you're not able to accomplish
And
it.
then you start having those experiences where they're like, yeah, it just wasn't a good experience, right? But in regard to it, leading on from that negotiation and more into the prime territory of an experienced, but I guess intelligent agent. I guess we'll go back to the idea of competency, niches here and there, but more importantly, the broad spectrum of an agent's knowledge about the market shouldn't just start with the word real estate, right? I would argue an agent needs to be able to critically analyze all fields that affect their, their industry, lending, the insurance industry, the obviously, when I said lending, I meant mortgage industry. When it comes to like potential rates of what other markets and how they will affect them. The presidency right now is really, really heavily involved in the housing market. How in tune are agents with, live events going on, and how can they speak to that? And I guess I would close down to vet an agent properly in that area. Don't just come to them with a broad, open-ended question of saying, what is your 5-year prediction? Or what do you feel like the market's like? I would get detailed, nitpick a specific event, a specific effect that might not even have to do with real estate, and try to gauge their opinion. If they start, flabbing along just trying to figure out an answer for you, and you can really feel that it's kind of more BS than actual confident reality, that's another area to kind of vet an agent, disqualify them or qualify them. What was the thing we were just talking about earlier? It was about the 20-year or the 30-year to the 50-year mortgage, and then we were also talking about portable mortgages and things like that. I told you, at least have a good understanding around portable mortgages. So when somebody asks you what the heck those are, you can return, you can satisfy that question and that conversation with a good perspective of surrounding situations and how they might be affected by it. Um,
Education.
yeah, there was an agent that gave me a really good answer when I was talking about something as um, not factual. 50-year mortgage is nowhere near coming true. It's just all talk in the air right now. But the way he approached it, he was just like, well, the 50-year mortgage is an interesting idea. Due to the fact that the cost of living has gone up, but also the lifespan of human beings has gone up. And like, the 30-year mortgage was made around this a time period when people could only live to this average age. And now we're living to this average age. And what does that look like? And then he also brought up facts that he's like, the average person doesn't even live out the entire mortgage of their property, right? First time home buyers stay in their house from 5 to 7 years. So we're looking at this 50-year mortgage like, oh, I'm in prison for this long a time. But his perspective was it's just cheaper money for the 5 to 7 years the most common person's going to be in that house. And then they're going to sell the house, finish the mortgage or something like that, and move on and get a different mortgage in the end. Whether that's a good perspective or a bad perspective, I just thought it was cool that he was able to critically analyze that question on the spot, because once again, he was proactive when it comes to reality around the industry, and not just particularly real estate, but everything affecting it, right?
It goes back to the idea of being a counselor, right? And you aren't just there to hold their hand and walk them through the process. You're there to help them understand and give them your professional and experienced opinion.
Yeah.
If really that question, what's the market going to look like in 5 years? Can anyone
true.
really answer that question?
No, it's all going to be opinion, right?
You know what I mean? Like, no, if someone sits there with a straight face and gives you a confident answer,
Well, I mean,
give me their number.
yeah, I mean, but like to have a confident idea of what the
Idea
like this is what's going to
versus
happen. At least have them
absolutes.
back it up. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely one of the vetting questions should be like somewhere along the lines of where do you see the market going and what their argument is and why. But yeah, if somebody's saying like this is what's going to happen based off what I don't know so and so said, yeah, no.
And
then
you
it
go,
gets a little
you
weird.
get, again, you pinpoint specifics, right?
Yeah.
What's the market going to look like as a whole? Well, there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
What's it going to look like in this specific area for this specific neighborhood?
Yeah.
That seems to be more of a realistic.
And we could come back to the idea,
Yeah.
like when you ask them that question, they go, "Well, I mean, that's a broad question. What kind of
More questions.
Yeah, what kind of details did you want to learn from the market? What market are you
Or
interested
you
in?
just wanting to understand what kind
Yeah.
of, home price value or
Yeah.
home value that you're going to get
Yeah,
within the next 5 years, right?
I agree. Yeah, so we're gonna close it down. We've talked your ear off plenty of time here. So I guess I'll kind of summarize what we were talking about. Obviously, when it comes to vetting your agent, one of the biggest things is a person that's experienced and passionate in their industry is gonna want to ask more questions before they just give you those robotic answers, right?
Hmm.
And then kind of closing it out. Run through this video if you want to, jot some different ideas down when it comes to interviewing agents. The last thing I will tell you is don't just interview one agent, right? And if that family friend or person that you know personally, you're scared to make angry if you go interview other agents, then I probably wouldn't hire them on. A good agent is going to be excited and promotional to competition, right? We ourselves traditionally tell buyers to interview us along with two or three more. So not only can we prove our value, but really, really amplify it, maybe build that resume and referral base. So we are Team Bray. I'm Rob.
This is Chad.
And if you guys enjoyed this podcast, definitely tune in. We're going to be coming out with one every week. We're going to get it to you by Monday, and it might be 24 to 40 hours behind, but more specifically, we will be focusing on current events, sporadic happenings in the industry, just so you can get I would argue, a grounded opinion on the topic. And keep an eye out for us if you have any interest in the real estate market or looking for professionals to assist you. We are Greater St. Louis, both Missouri and Illinois. We'll see you guys later. Boo, 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 boo. Outside intro, music, blah, blah, blah.